Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Yesterday it rained all day and was incredibly cold, and as a consequence I didn't actually want to be out here because it was just cold and felt miserable and dank, and basically I just didn't do anything out here yesterday. Unfortunately I should have done. So today I've got a lot of watering to do. I won't get everything done, that's for sure, but I'm going to deliberately make my way round a certain set of shelves. This video is going to be about rescue plants. I've had quite a lot of people inquiring as to how plants are coming on after perhaps an older video where there was a problem on a plant, something like that. So I'm going to just do a it'll probably end up being quite a miserable video really, but it's looking at the plants that I class as rescues. So there comes a time when a plant's no longer considered a rescue plant. In other words, it's now doing fine. So it's just a normal orchid in amongst the others. But until such times, I still consider them as rescues. They don't really get treated any differently. But depending on the reason they became a rescue in the first place, I do keep my eye on them. They get an extra good look over when I'm watering and things like that. So, right, first off then, reasons why a plant ends up in that state. Many and varied. I think most of us will have come across probably the most common one, is we get a plant and it looks a bit miserable in the pot, so we think, oh, we'll repot that and refresh the media, and you get it out of the pot and there's no roots. And we've bought a plant that is, as near as damn it, rootless. Yeah? So you're off on a bad foot. You're certainly not starting on a, on a sort of running footing, are you? So automatically that plant becomes a rescue plant. Because, you know, strictly speaking, it's difficult to get a strong, healthy, actively growing plant at the top of the pot when there's nothing in the bottom of the pot. So we've all come across that, I'm sure. We just get plants sometimes that have just got incredibly poor root systems. The reason they've got in that state at the point you own the plant becomes irrelevant, because you've now got it and it's now your job to try and do something with it. And I mean, there's many ways to deal with those. I'll go over them as I sort of pick up individual plants. So that's one of the main reasons, is we get a plant with a very poor root system. Okay, now the reasons they can get like that in the main are that they've just been left in the pot too long with poor quality media that's breaking down and it's taken the root system out. Yeah. This often happens in commercial nurseries that just want to sell the plant. So they've got the plant to a particular point, often in a very small pot with just sphagnum moss in there, and then they just take it out of that pot, stick it in another one, and chuck enough media in there for them to be able to grow that plant on to blooming size, at which point they sell it. And the chances are it hasn't been repotted during that time. They're not going to use the best quality bark or media. They're going to use what they can get away with. Now, you might think this is naughty. They're in business to make a living. Yeah? So at the time you buy the plant, that media has probably gone past its sell-by date. And that's just how it is. You know, that's if you're going to buy those very popular mass-produced type plants, that's often the state they will be in. So you need to be aware of it. That doesn't mean to say you shouldn't buy the plant. You know, these plants will pick up again, given the right conditions. So that's one. Another reason a plant can go downhill is bugs. Yeah. Now, strictly speaking, unless bugs get really badly out of hand, they're not going to kill your orchid. They might make it look a bit manky. You got damage to the leaves and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it's probably not going to take your plant down unless it gets really, really bad. And that's down to us. At the end of the day, if you observe your plants, keep your eye on them, you should spot these little bug outbreaks before they get serious. Now, the ones that you're liable to miss are the spider mites, because to all intents and purposes the individual insects are almost impossible to see. They are minute, yeah? But what you see is their damage. And by then, there's, you know, their numbers are starting to increase a bit, you know. They tend to go for the underside of the leaves. You start getting marks and like a silvery film over the underside of the leaves. So literally anything that looks strange on your plant, investigate it. And if you've got a good magnifying glass or something like that, and you think you've got mites, then just use your magnifying glass. They're not that small that you can't see them under that sort of environment. So, you know, I mean, I've seen them on my plants and I can see them with my eyes. I don't need a magnifying glass. But most of the time you spot where they've been, if you see what I mean, their damage. Mealy bugs stick out like a sore thumb. They're white, you know, and our plants tend to be green, and white on green shows up pretty good. You should be able to spot those, and they're easy to deal with. You can even just wash them off under the tap. I mean, you might, you know, there might be some eggs in there that come back again, but they're easy to deal with. You know, soapy wash type sprays will probably get rid of them, as long as you haven't got too many. But there's scale. Now, scale are a pain, because they can get down in the media, they can get in under the rhizomes, they can get in the base of the plant where the roots are coming out, and even sit on the underside of the roots. And they're easy to miss in the early stages, but once you see that little white mass, that's the crawler stages that haven't long hatched out. And at that point they're mobile. And they will move around, but they don't tend to move around if they're happy where they are. And if they stay where they are on that single plant, you can deal with them. I mean, I'm not going into every single method of getting rid of every single bug. There's more than enough information out there to find that sort of stuff out. I still recommend that for bugs, get a decent systemic pesticide and deal with it, and have done with it, and wipe your hands of it, yeah? Because some of the other remedies and the homemade stuff, they may appear to do the job, but you're looking at multiple applications over and over again to make sure you've done it. So you increase your workload. If you don't like chemicals, that's your option. Then we get on to diseases. Not that common. This is not the panic side of growing orchids, really. Diseases are not that common. Bugs are. You can get them. You can bring home a nice shiny new plant that looks smashing and infects the 6 plants sat around it with bugs, you know, because they do move around. But diseases are not common. Viruses are rare. You will get distinct markings on your leaves of various shapes and forms. If you think you've got one, go and look it up. See if you can match up the patterns on your leaves with the pictures you'll find on the internet. There's quite a lot of information on the American Orchid Society site and various other places. Most English orchid societies have got a bit on pests and diseases, but they don't seem to go into the viruses that much. Probably because they're just not common. They're not something you should immediately worry about. But if you've got a plant with a virus, just remember it can't be cured. Yeah, and it is possible to spread, mainly through unsterilised tools and pots, and you're just transferring any sort of sap or damaged portion of one plant onto another, and you can pass it on. But viruses are mainly spread through people, through us, through our own negligence, but they're rare, so we don't need to worry about those. Rots, well, we can have fun with those. You've got the black rot. That's fast. You've got brown rot, you've got orange rot, aptly named because it looks like the colour that your plant turns. Most of those are pretty fast acting and you need to get at those rotting parts. The rots tend to be wet, soggy, and if they get too bad, they smell horrible. You know, you're looking at decay in an extreme form. So you've got to get those bits out of the plant. What else? See, we shouldn't be buying plants like this in the first place, really, you know, but your plant can still get them and turn them into a rescue plant. I'll be going over a couple of those when we get there, because I've had some. Don't get it often, but you know, when you get it, deal with it fast enough, you might save your plant. Don't deal with it fast enough and you will lose your plant. and then it's just an ex-orchid hedge fertiliser, or whatever you want to call it, but it has ceased to be. So anyway, I'll go around some plants as I'm watering. As I come across these rescue plants, the trouble is I might not get at them all today, but by being selective on which ones I water today, I should manage to get at least most of them. So it makes it sound like I've got dozens and dozens. I haven't, but there's still some around, and we'll go over them each in turn. But my basic problems were, in my ignorance, leaving plants in pots too long when the media was already breaking down. Reason being, it was spiking or coming into bloom. And in my ignorance, I used to think, oh God, I can't repot it now, it's coming into bloom. Well, lose the plant then, please yourself. That's the way I look at it now. If a pot is, if the media's breaking down and the roots are starting to go over, the plant takes priority over the blooms. Pretty blooms will come again. If you lose the plant, then they don't, unless you go and buy another one. So that's one of my main reasons. That doesn't tend to happen anymore, but leaving a plant in the pot too long. Using poor quality bark, guilty. I didn't know at the time that the bark I bought was rubbish. I got told in no uncertain terms by members of the Orchid Society, oh, you don't want to use that stuff's absolute crap. And then you start thinking, well, if I can't use that, what can I use? And then you start getting the advice from people that have used stuff, and works for them. So, I eventually found what I use now. So, using poor quality media doesn't help. It'll come into the same category, because if you use poor quality media, it will break down faster, and then you end up in the same situation. Your media's going off and you're losing your roots. So those two really go together. And the other reasons are various, but in the main, it's leaving the plant in the pot too long, media breaking down, not noticing rots quick enough, and they've got the whole plant, down goes the plant, and buying plants with very poor or non-existent root systems. That's really it with me, and most of those I've eliminated. I don't use poor quality media anymore. I will not leave a plant in its pot too long. I'd rather repot it too early than too late. Simple. And to do that, I need notes. I need records of when things were repotted and what they were repotted in. Yeah, if I'm using the smallish bark with a fair bit of moss, and it's the sort of plant that needs to stay moist, that media will go over a lot quicker than perhaps, say, my Cattleyas in the large chunky bark in the holy clay pots, which are allowed to totally dry in between watering. Yeah, so having the notes of what they're potted in, when they were repotted, will help you keep your eye on things, especially if you've got a large collection, So right, we'll have a look at some plants as I go round. Oh, and the channel name change took place this morning, whatever it is, 15th, literally early in the morning, and apparently is totally seamless. The only place you're likely to see it is if you go to my main channel homepage. You'll see the name change, and also on my comments on other people's videos and my replies to your own comments. You'll see the new channel name there, but apart from that, nothing seems to have changed, so that was all painless. It was a bit of a worry, but painless. And to be fair, the other channel called Roger Frampton has been there a lot longer than mine. So mine was the second one. So by changing the name of mine, that search will now go straight to that other guy's channel that's been up and running a lot longer than mine, and it seems fair to me that that search will take you to his and not mine. Yeah? So your search key now is just Roger's Orchids, and it should take you absolutely straight there. I even tried it this morning, so it seems to work okay. So let's get and have a look at some plants. Right, I'll get these two Cattleyas out of the way first, because I get asked quite often about these. How are those two bare-stemmed Cattleyas doing? These were just pieces. They had no roots and no signs of life, and they were just lying on their side on shelves for months and months and months. And then they showed some signs of life, and I won't say these are rescued by any means. They're a long way from being rescued, but they are coming on. But their rescue phase has been during the winter. So I wasn't expecting the earth off of them, to say the least. But this one's pushed up a new growth. That's a weak growth, but nonetheless it's going to open a leaf. That will add to its ability to live, basically. And it has produced some new roots, heading off down into the pot. So it's sort of on its way back again, but far from a well plant. And this piece, the same Cattleya, yeah, that pushed out a new growth. It has got some roots, most of which have actually gone straight down in the pot, which is good. That's the best place for them. But the new growth is quite poor, quite weak, very small, but nonetheless it will give it the ability to hopefully push that out and get another one going, and maybe another one from the latest growth as well. But there's an eye there that could grow, and the new growth, although it's small, will have the relevant eye to push on another new growth, and hopefully the next two new growths on each of these, I'll be lucky to get more than one, but whenever they start, they're going to have the growing season to grow in, and hopefully that will pull these plants on a bit. The reason why I'm keeping these is the pop-up I'm now going to show you. Because if it wasn't for that, these two would have been thrown out a long time ago. So, reason this one went downhill, left in the pot too long, media broke down, roots gave up, followed by realising that fact and trying to repot it when there were no signs of new roots whatsoever. Took off a fair bit of the old plant, removed some of its strength, and it just went down. And I ended up with some what appeared to be dead bits. Well, they're alive, a long way from doing well, but not dead yet. But yeah, now you can see the reason why I'm trying to get these two going. Now this sorry looking object, this is Prosthetia garciana, and it has lovely blooms. I'll put the blooms up. This one got taken out by a really bad scale infestation. At the time I was using wishy-washy remedies that just did not get rid of them, and they'd got such a hold on this plant that they were actually taking new growths off and new roots before they could even get going. And I rescued this piece off of what was a very large plant, and this is the only piece that looked like it might recover. Well, we've got a new growth coming out here. That was the last new growth. That's far from right, that's still a bit weak, but now another one's coming here. Again, winter growth. This should be a growing season growth. And we've got another nice one coming out here up against the previous one. No, I was going to say that might have buds in. But this is what the scale were doing. They were weakening the plant so bad that the plant just couldn't hydrate itself. And it was producing just manky, twisted, gnarly things coming out, and I thought I'd lost it completely. But far from recovered, but recovering. But that was on a mount, and I thought we'll try it in a pot to get a decent root system going, which it's doing. Yeah, I mean that's coming on quite nicely, and the roots are all up the front end of the plant where the new growths are coming from. So I'm getting there with that one. It may even bloom by the end of the season, because it's quite a vigorous grower, but not yet. You know, obviously it needs to get some more new growths and possibly some more leads. You can see that was a single rhizome. Yeah, you can see how many times that rhizome split to create new leads. So it can grow quite large quite quickly, and it does have lovely fragrant blooms. So yeah, it's coming on, and it's got roots now. I see no reason why that shouldn't carry on to recover. And boy does this one get a good look over, in case literally scale can reappear 3 or 4 months after you've never seen one. From the point you think the plant's absolutely clean, they can just suddenly come back. So I really do give this one a good look over. They're not getting at it again, little tykes. And the other thing I must mention, unfortunately, is the dreaded F word. I lost a lot of plants to fusarium, and my investigations led me to believe that the majority of those plants across the board came from 2 suppliers only. I bought a lot of Cattleyas from an online lady, and they appeared to be quite nice plants. I even went to her house and collected some of them to save the postage, as I was down in Devon anyway visiting Burnham's, and she had what appeared to be a marvellous collection of plants, but she no longer sells. She's gone from view, and I think, reading between the lines, that probably just took hold of her collection eventually. Maybe she didn't know she had it. I don't think she'd have deliberately sold those plants on knowing that, so the chances are she didn't know. But almost across the board, any of those Cattleyas that I bought from that source are dead and gone. Some I threw out as a precaution because they were just going downhill. Some went downhill and died before I even knew why. I also got a couple of Oncidium intergenerics from that lady, including a Psychopsis as a free gift. She just said, "Oh, you have that, I don't want it." And it's still with me, it's not dead yet. So, and this was a long time ago now, we're going back long before I had this grow room. You know, this was in early days when I was a windowsill grower as such, but yeah, most of those plants are gone now, and as I go round on the rescue plants, even though some of those plants are now doing well, I'll still show them as they are now, just to prove the point that if you catch fusarium early enough and treat it properly, you can stop it spreading. You can kill it off as a fungus, which is what it is. And stop it getting into newer parts of the plant, and the plant can then proceed to grow out of it. But some plants you won't be successful with, they just won't make it, you know, they just don't. But the biggest collection of information you can possibly find on that is to go to Anna Maria's channel, Miracle Orchids. She did extensive research and use of chemicals, procedures to do the best you can if you think you've got that. I still have to say the bottom line is, if you think you've got an infected plant, the general consensus is bin it. Now, I'm not sticking to that because I hate giving up. I do not like to give up on plants, and I just looked at the plants that was, you know, confirmed, shall we say, and I thought, have you got enough strength left in you to actually progress and grow out of this? Are you worth trying? And some that I've tried are now doing well, others still went down anyway. So it's a horrible thing to get, and it can cause a panic. It did do a few years ago on the internet. We had people going out in the gardens and setting fire to piles of orchids. I don't think you quite need to go to that extreme, but bottom line is, if a plant's too far gone, you're probably not going to get it back. And you know, the vigorous growers seem to grow out of it better. The real slow growers and the monopodial orchids, things like Phalaenopsis and Vandaceous types, if they've got it, it's not that easy to get rid of, because they've got a single stem and it gets in the base of the plants and blocks up all the pathways for the nutrients and the hydration and everything like that. It stops new roots growing properly, and it stops everything getting up into the top of the plant. Well, plants with canes and pseudobulbs and things like that push out new growths, which can then produce their own new roots, so they can get past it. But if you get it in a Vanda, well, good luck. Depending on how advanced it's got, you might stop it, but they're the least easy to recover. As I say, the vigorous growers just seem to push past it. Once you treat it, you know, if you leave it untreated, it could live in the plant for a very long time, but eventually the plant will slow up, it will start to go downhill, bulbs will be smaller, roots will start to fail, and it will eventually succumb. So if you think you've got it in a plant, get your fungicides, systemic fungicides in there, repeat your processes, try and rotate to more than one chemical, and you may recover them, but not always. So it's up to you. These are your choices. I can't advise one way or the other because it is a personal thing. And with me, I've recovered some, so unless a plant's too far gone, I'll always give it a go. But that's me. It's, as I say, it's a personal choice. Alright, that's my Orangus critata. Correction, it was. That's going out. It's too far gone. That was quite a nice plant. It was actually bought in bloom. It didn't have bad roots and it was growing. And then it pushed out a little side growth, which you can now see, and the main plant just died. I have no idea why. It just went. And quite honestly, that is just too far gone. I'm not prepared to carry on with that one. What I will do though, because I like it, is look out for another good one. So that, you know, I'm keeping my eye out for a replacement. But, you know, that's 2-3 years minimum off of blooming, if it ever grows. And I mean, even some of the older leaves on that new growth are not looking good. So I think that one's just going to go. It's not worth keeping. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show this. This is the aforementioned Psychopsis that I got from the lady as a free gift that had the fusarium in the Cattleyas. Yeah? So it was always a suspect plant. And this one went downhill from my point of view with a fear of repotting. You know, everywhere you read, oh, they don't like their roots being disturbed. But then you actually find out that, you know, if you just get on and repot it and refresh the media, you refresh the plant. But I don't know whether I can show this properly. That is spider mites. Now that's a very rare occurrence for me, and this plant's indoors at the moment, and indoors is perfect. Dry air and nice and warm, exactly what they like. Now, last time I watered this, I thought I'd seen some on this plant. I sprayed it with the systemic, but strictly speaking, the type of pesticide I've got doesn't specify spider mites, and they've come back. So that is going to get alcohol, cotton wool bud with alcohol, and coat up those leaves and kill the ones I can see now, and then come back to it in a couple of days and do it again. But I'm not sure how well that's going to film. But you see what I mean? I can see those with my naked eye. Yeah, they're little dots all over the leaf that shouldn't be there, but it is only when you start blowing them up that you can see some of those dots have that reddish tinge, and some of them have got legs. Not a nice thing to get, but if you deal with it quickly, I'm hoping I will have a good look at my other indoor plants, but I'm hoping this is just a minor outbreak on this one particular plant. Now this is a recovering plant. I did repot it and it lost all its roots, and well, it's growing some roots, so it's on the road to recovery. But it pushed up its latest new growth during the winter time with very little light, and it's a very poor, weak growth. During its time indoors, its spike decided to die back. I cut it to see if it will branch out, but I don't think it will. So I now have no flower spike on this one. So I don't know how long it's going to be with me. This is the species Paphiopedilum, and it's the alba form. So I'd rather keep it. So I will give it a go, try and get rid of them spider mites. And now that it's got some roots, it's got to spend a little bit more time indoors yet. But when it comes back out here, yeah, and gets that high humidity again, it should pull on. But that's typical spider mite damage on the back of the leaf, and they haven't been on the front of the leaf long enough to do too much damage yet. And it is, and on the other leaves don't look bad. It's just on that one leaf, so they haven't spread too much yet. So hopefully I can deal with them, but that's the signs you're looking for, is little dots all over the leaves that don't look right. And if you can get a magnifying glass, you will see whether they've got legs or not. And anything that's got legs that's on one of your orchids shouldn't be there. Simple as that. So I'll deal with that one. Okay, what I've done is got some ISO thingy. It's too early in the day to do big long words starting with ISO, but the rubbing alcohol 70% and little cotton wool bud, and that confirms my suspicions. Yeah, if you've got spider mites, you can often do it with your finger. If you rub your finger over the area you think, if you get a rusty colour, then yes, you've probably got spider mites. There isn't much else will produce that coloration. And remember that if you're going to use alcohol, it's the evaporation that does the killing. So you don't really want to soak your whole plant. What you want to do is create a very, very thin film, and just dip in one of these in some alcohol and then gently rub in the leaves. Produces the thinnest possible film, and if you look, I've just treated that plant. It's virtually dry already, and it's that drying process that does the killing. Yeah? And obviously if I'm rubbing away with this, I'm actually brushing them off at the same time. So that's that one done. That needs some water now. And I'll keep my eye on it, look at it again in a few days' time, see if there's any that have got away with the treatment, and deal with it again. It's just a matter of keeping the numbers low enough that they can't form any colonies and get going and spread. But my indoor environment is perfect for spider mites. Out here, no. They don't like it cold, and at night it's cold. Yeah, so they're not going to thrive. And they also don't like high humidity. Well, I've got high humidity. This is why I probably very, very rarely see them. But that was definitely them, and hopefully they are now ex-spider mites. But yeah, seriously recovering plant, but now it's got some roots. Hopefully its next new growth will push on and produce a decent leaf, because that's not up to much, that leaf. Strangely enough, that leaf hasn't got any spider mites. It was the old ones. Anyway, we'll see how we do. But I suppose bottom line is I don't hold out a lot of hope for this one. But it's now, because that spike is highly unlikely to branch and it's lost its bud at the top, I have to grow a new spike. Well, they take a year to grow, and I don't think this growth's going to produce a spike. So I've now got to mature a new growth and get a new spike before that comes back into bloom again. So we're looking at possibly 2, even 3 years. So it's now a long way off. So it's gone off my list of nice plants. It's now become a problem. Do I warrant the space to keep it and look after it that long? Well, I'm not making the decision today, but yeah, it may have limited days now. And my other Psychopsis, the older leaves don't look so good, and this was another one. I left it in the pot too long. It's my own fault, that fear of repotting and messing up the root system. Well, you leave it too late, you mess up the root system anyway, so quite honestly you just as well get on and repot it. And if I'd done that, maybe I'd have saved the root system. But nonetheless, this one has produced a pretty good new growth. Almost full-size leaf, which for a plant with no roots is not bad. The bulb is just starting to swell now. I may get a new spike off of that growth. I don't know. But I can see at the base that it is now producing roots. So it's recovering. This had no viable roots on it. And basically it's sat on sphagnum moss with a little bit of perlite in there, just to keep the base of that plant hydrated, and any new roots get straight into something. But because I don't want it to stay soggy, I did crock the bottom of the pot quite heavily with large bark. This one's still maintaining its flower spike. It hasn't long gone out of bloom. The next bud is just starting to push on now. That's probably had, I don't know, 15, 16 blooms on it so far. You see, each one of these sheaths is where a bud once was, from here right up to there, and it hasn't finished yet. But I really would like a second spike on this one, because eventually the spike will deteriorate and start producing smaller blooms. If you can get a good one of these with 5 or 6 spikes on or more, then you've got a good plant. But the bulbs look good, they're nice and swollen, they have plumped up since it got sat on its moss. So recovering, but it's a slow grower for me. I mean, these are warm growers and they like good humidity, warmth and medium light. And obviously it's in the house for the winter because I can't provide that out here during the winter time. And that slows it down because it loses its humidity. But in the not too distant, it'll get back out here again and maybe push on a better root system and hopefully another new growth sometime during the growing season, and maybe a spike on the latest growth it's produced. So coming on slowly. Now these two little Paphiopedilums were my daughter's, and her plants got badly neglected leading up to her heart surgery and everything. She just couldn't concentrate on her plants and stuff, understandably so. When she went in hospital, all her plants came down here. This little one here, this is Thompson. That had no roots, it now has some, so it's recovering. And it's grown that new leaf and it's now pushing another one up. So I think that one's on the mend. But that came from 0 roots to having some. This little one, this is Delenatii, and it's the vinicolor variety. That's nowhere near blooming size really yet. I mean, these are dwarf Paphiopedilums, they never grow big. But this one had 0 roots, and it's not far off still having 0 roots. There is one new root starting to grow in under that moss, and that's it. That's all it's got. But nonetheless, it is pushing up. It did that last year, and it's now pushing another new leaf up. So I'm hoping both of those are going to make it, but they were in a very sorry state. I expected them both to die. So the fact that they're both still alive, I mean, look at the leaf colour on that. You know, it's worth keeping just for that, even if it doesn't flower for ages. But I'm hoping to recover both of these. This one's quite well on its way now. There's several new roots down in the pot, and this one has the start of a single new root. I'll have to see what it does with that. I'd like to get that one a bit deeper in the pot, but it's just lost its lower leaf. So I'm reluctant to get the base of that plant too wet. That one's in moss and bark, it seems to be doing. That one's just in moss at the moment. I was just desperately trying to get some hydration around the base to get a root to grow, which I think is now sort of working. But as soon as I see any sign of a root getting to the edge of the pot, that will go in some proper media. You know, with some bark mixed in with it, where it can stay for a while. I don't want to continue growing that in just moss. Eventually that moss will start to pack down when I water it and shut the air out and won't be so good. The bark helps keep some air in amongst it. So two recovering little Paphiopedilums. Okay, I've got a conflict of interest now. Starting to get warm out here, and there are some things that just have to be watered today, and trying to pick out rescue plants and film them and talk about them is slowing me right down. So I'm going to cut this one off where I am now, and I'll pick it up again tomorrow because I know the watering will continue tomorrow, and those I haven't got at today will definitely be on the list tomorrow. So I'll split this into a part 1 and a part 2. And we'll go from there. So thanks for dropping by and see you next time.